The year-end executive workshop had barely begun when I was redirected before I could even speak. Catering staff this way. The man did not hesitate. His arm lifted, palm open, already turning his body as if I had complied. The corridor he pointed to was narrow, quiet, efficient, designed for people meant to pass through unnoticed. "I'm here for the workshop." My voice stayed level. My name followed. Amelia Hartwell. He looked once quick, dismissive, then past me, toward the line forming behind. Kitchen entrance is around the corner. A woman stepped closer, her badge swinging against her blazer. She did not bother lowering her voice enough. "Keep that cleaning lady away from the VIPs." The words settled in the space between us. Not staff, not guest. Cleaning lady. Something to be managed, removed, hidden, for a moment. My fingers tightened around the invitation folded in my bag. One sentence would have changed everything. One correction would have forced apologies, smiles, embarrassment dressed up as courtesy. Instead, I watched her slide a temporary badge toward me. "Put this on," she said, "and don't wander." The plastic felt thin in my hand. "Thank you." Neither of them responded. Someone behind me sighed impatiently. Another laughed under their breath. The line moved forward. I stepped sideways, clipped the badge to my coat, and walked exactly where I had been told. The story you are about to hear is a fictional work created by the writing team at Revenge AITA. While the characters and events are imagined, the emotions reflect real experiences of being dismissed, underestimated, and judged before being heard. Each story carries its own message, its own reckoning, and its own truth. The doors swung closed behind me, the noise changed, laughter loosened, voices dropped their filters. If we move fast, no one will question it. Legal will smooth it over. Confidence traveled easily when it believed itself unobserved. I slowed my steps, letting the badge settle against my chest. People passed without looking at my face. No one asked my name, no one cared where I was going. That was fine. I had not come to be recognized. Not yet. I came to listen. Why stay silent when one sentence could end the humiliation? Because I had learned what comes next when power is revealed too early. Apologies. Smiles stretched tight. Explanations that sounded generous and meant nothing. People fixed their tone, not their behavior. They reset the moment without paying for it. I walked into the service corridor by choice. A man in a black polo passed me, balancing a tray. "You're late," he muttered. "Already moving on." "Noted," I replied. He glanced back, surprised by the calm, then shrugged. "They're already pouring." I won't slow anyone down. That was true. I never did. Voices leaked through the doors ahead, unfiltered now, careless. The kind of confidence that only shows itself when it believes it has an audience beneath it. "They won't push back," a man said. "They never do." Another voice laughed. "Legacy staff always think they're untouchable." A pause. Paper rustled. Someone lowered their voice anyway. "Did legal sign off?" "They'll catch up," the first voice answered. "We're not waiting." I stopped near a cart stacked with empty glasses. No one noticed. No one needed to. I listened the way I had learned to listen years ago, without reacting, without taking notes, without letting my face give anything away. A woman brushed past me and said, "Don't block the door." "I won't," I said. Stepping aside, she nodded, satisfied. Authority likes compliance. It rarely checks competence. Inside my bag. My phone vibrated once. I ignored it. This was not the moment to interrupt the rhythm of people speaking freely. This was the moment to let them finish their thoughts. Someone else spoke, sharper now. "If it goes wrong, we reverse it later." Silence followed, not agreement, relief. I exhaled slowly and clipped the badge more securely to my coat. The plastic pressed flat against my chest, anonymous and effective. Silence was not weakness. Silence was leverage. And as the voices continued looser, louder, more certain, I understood something they did not. When people believe no one important is listening, they tell you exactly who they are. What if the real danger isn't being insulted but what you overhear next? The voices grew louder as I moved closer to the service station. No one lowered them anymore. No one bothered to check who was within earshot. "They've been coasting for years," a man said. "Legacy staff, comfortable, expensive." Another voice cut in, sharper. "Then we stopped paying for comfort." "That many terminations in one quarter?" someone asked. A pause. "Compliance will push back. They always do. The first voice replied. And they always lose. Paper slid across a counter. I heard the dry scrape of a pen. We'll clean it up after, the new voice said. Confident, young. The kind of confidence that assumes cleanup is automatic. Sign now, we announce tomorrow. A woman laughed. You're moving fast. Speed is the point, he said. If they don't have time to complain, they don't have time to stop us. I stayed still, invisible, useful. Legal flagged the vendor exit. Another man offered. There's exposure. Minimal, the VP said. And temporary. Temporary. That word again. It always showed up right before depositions. A cart rolled past me. Glass clinked. No one noticed when I stepped closer. What about the pension group, someone asked. They're protected. Not if we restructure, the VP replied. Different entity, different obligations. Silence followed. Then approval disguised as relief. That's aggressive, the woman said. That's leadership, he answered. I recognized the cadence, the shortcuts, the certainty that rules existed for other people. I had heard this language before, years ago, in rooms where no one thought consequences had teeth. A phone chimed. Someone laughed again. The mood lifted. Send it to the board later, the VP said. Once the dust settles, the pen scratched once more. I took a slow breath and shifted the badge on my coat. This was no longer about being dismissed at the door. This was about decisions made in confidence, signed in haste, and defended with arrogance. I stepped back into the corridor, unseen. They were not just talking anymore. They were committing. What if the success they're bragging about exists because of you? The new VP's voice carried easily through the corridor. Energized now, almost celebratory. This is the project that put us ahead of everyone else, he said. The board wanted growth. I delivered it. Someone whistled softly. That fast. He laughed. You don't wait for perfect conditions. You create momentum. I stopped walking. The margins alone justify it. He continued. Year one was risky, sure. But once the infrastructure was in place, it paid for itself. A man nearby added. No one else would have approved that kind of upfront exposure. The VP didn't hesitate. That's the difference between old leadership and new. I leaned lightly against the wall, unseen. Every number he mentioned landed cleanly in my head. The capital structure, the phased rollout. The approvals spaced just far enough apart to keep regulators calm. I had signed those approvals, not in this building, not in a meeting like this. 10 years earlier, in a quiet office with outdated furniture and a trustee who asked the same question 3 times to be sure. Are you comfortable with the risk, Ms. Hartwell? Yes. That is a significant allocation. It's necessary. And if it fails, then it fails honestly. The trust documents had been finalized 2 days later. No press release, no credit. Just a line item that allowed the company to expand when it could not afford to hesitate. Back in the corridor, the VP kept talking. The best part, he said. Everyone thinks it was inevitable. Laughter followed, agreement, admiration. I adjusted the strap of my bag. I had never needed inevitability. I had needed outcome. That project was not luck. It was patience, timing, and a decision made without applause. A woman asked. Who pushed it through originally? The VP waved the question away. Ancient history. Ancient, apparently, meant inconvenient. I stepped back from the wall as the group moved on. Their confidence intact, their narrative settled. They stood on something solid, something tested. They just didn't know who had poured the foundation. And they were very comfortable dancing on it. When does silence stop being patience and become complicity? The signature landed with a dull tap, followed by the scrape of paper pulled free. That clears the backlog, the new VP said, effective immediately. A chair shifted. All of them, he replied. We announce before end of day. Another voice cut in, cautious. Those roles are protected under the shareholder agreement. He smiled at that. I could hear it. Protected doesn't mean permanent. Legal flagged it. Someone said, there's a cooling period. Cooling periods are suggestions. He answered. Momentum doesn't wait. Pages turned. A second pen followed the first. And the vendor contracts, a woman asked. 2 of those are tied to regulatory filings. Cancel, he said. We restructure under a different entity. A pause. The kind that meant someone knew better. That triggers disclosure, the woman added. Within 90 days. We'll handle disclosure, he said. After. The word that made problems invisible until they weren't. I stepped closer to the service counter. No one looked up. Human resources needs sign-off, a man offered, trying once more. Already done, the VP replied. I'm not asking for permission. Another pause, shorter this time. Agreement arrived disguised as efficiency. Send it, someone said. I'll send it. The VP corrected. Now, the room exhaled. Decisions settled. Careers shifted without faces attached. I felt the moment turn inside me, not sharp, not angry, but final. This was not bravado. This was damage dressed as confidence. A line crossed with a steady hand and a borrowed pen. My phone vibrated again in my bag. I took it out this time. The message was brief, routine, waiting. I looked at the closed door, at the voices moving on to their next topic, already congratulating themselves. Good work, someone said. About time. Another agreed. I typed slowly, carefully. No commentary, no emotion. Attachments added. Timestamps intact. I did not send it yet, but I knew I would. Silence had done its job. It had shown me exactly where the fault lines were. And now that I could see them clearly, standing aside was no longer restraint. It was endorsement. I put the phone away, straightened the badge on my coat, and stepped back into the corridor, already measuring the distance between decision and consequence. What's the quietest action that can change everything? I stepped into an empty alcove and opened my phone. No shaking, no second thoughts. The subject line appeared first. Request for emergency review. I attached the files one by one. The termination list, signed and timestamped. The vendor cancellations, cross-referenced against the shareholder agreement. The compliance flags marked ignored, clean, complete, nothing dramatic. Just facts assembled in the order they insisted on being seen. A name popped up at the top of the thread, then another. People who never replied unless the matter was already serious. A message came in before I finished typing. Are you sure from legal? I answered with a single sentence. Yes. Please review the attachments. Another notification followed, faster this time. When were these executed this morning? I said quietly to no one, then typed the same. Within the last 2 hours, the typing bubble appeared, disappeared, reappeared, understood, looping in compliance and audit. I added no commentary. Commentary invited negotiation. I pressed send. The screen went still. Behind the door, the voices shifted. Lighter now. A joke landed. Someone clapped once. Good call, the VP said. We'll deal with fallout later. Later had just arrived. My phone vibrated again. A new thread. Short, formal, emergency review scheduled. All related authority temporarily paused pending assessment. Paused. Not reversed. Not announced. Paused. I slipped the phone back into my bag and straightened my coat. The badge caught the light as I moved. Still anonymous. Still unremarkable. A man passed me and nodded. Everything good back here? Yes, I said. Everything's in motion. He smiled and kept walking. The system had been engaged. No voices raised, no doors slammed. Just a sequence set in place that did not require my presence to continue. I stepped away from the alcove and rejoined the corridor, aware of the shift I could not yet see but could already feel. Power did not need to announce itself to take effect. It only needed to be activated. What if the room goes silent because of one name? The emergency meeting convened faster than anyone expected. Chairs scraped, screens flickered on. The new VP stood at the head of the table, jacket buttoned, voice steady. Thank you for joining on short notice, he began. We'll keep this efficient. A few nods followed. His assistant slid into a seat along the wall, tablet clutched tight. She did not look at me. The chair cleared his throat. Before we proceed, one of our shareholders has a question. The VP smiled without turning. Of course. A pause. Not dramatic. Precise. Amelia Hartwell. The name traveled slowly, like sound through water. One person looked up. Another blinked. A third reached for a folder. Already too late. The assistant's face drained. She stared at the screen, then at me, then away. The VP turned. His breath hitched once before he masked it. I'm sorry, who I stood. No rush. No announcement. Present, I said. Silence thickened. Someone whispered my name again, softer, confirming it for themselves. A director leaned back, eyes narrowing in recognition. The chair nodded to me, Ms. Hartwell. I did not mention the kitchen. I did not repeat a single word I had heard earlier. I opened my folder. These decisions were executed this morning, I said. Without required review. The VP cut in. Those were operational. Please don't interrupt. The chair said gently. I continued. The termination list violates existing protections. The vendor cancellations triggered disclosure obligations within 90 days. Authority was exceeded. The VP swallowed. We can revise. Legal spoke for the first time. Authority has already been paused. The assistant's tablet slipped from her hands and clattered to the floor. The chair folded his hands. We'll hear from compliance. I closed my folder and sat. The room did not erupt. It recalibrated. Titles shifted. Assumptions collapsed quietly, one by one. I felt it settle, not triumph, not relief, just alignment. The meeting moved on without him leading it. What's more frightening, being yelled at or being audited? I did not raise my voice. I did not look at him when I spoke. These are the decisions executed this morning, I said, sliding the pages forward. Please confirm the approval sequence. The VP adjusted his tie. Operational authority allows legal interrupted. Please answer the question. He glanced at the documents. They were approved under expedited review. By whom, I asked. He hesitated. By my office. Compliance leaned in. Expedited review still requires secondary sign-off. That was pending. He said, we intended to. Intention is not authorization. Legal said, flatly. I turned a page. These vendor cancellations restructure obligations under a separate entity. Please identify the disclosure plan. The VP's jaw tightened. Disclosure would occur after stabilization. Define stabilization. Compliance said. Silence stretched. Not long enough. Within the quarter, he offered. Legal shook his head. The requirement is within 90 days of execution. The VP opened his mouth, then closed it. We can reverse. The authority to reverse has been paused, the chair said. As of this morning, the assistant sat rigid, hands folded, eyes fixed on the table. I continued, measured. Human resources executed terminations covered by shareholder protections. Please confirm the exemptions cited. He flipped through his notes too quickly. Those protections apply to legacy roles. They apply to named roles. Compliance replied, the list includes 3. Legal looked up. That triggers investigation. The chair nodded once. Authority is frozen pending review. Decisions executed today are reversed. Audit opens immediately. No one argued. No one needed to. I closed my folder and sat back. The room moved on, procedural and precise. Titles rearranged themselves without ceremony. The VP remained seated, present but removed, listening as others took over the agenda he had planned to lead. There was no anger in the room, no raised voices, no spectacle, only process. And process, when it finally arrives, has a way of lasting longer than any outburst ever could. Do you need to stay and watch a collapse to know you won? I stood while the next agenda item was still loading on the screen. Ms. Hartwell, the chair said, surprised. I've said what I needed to say. No one asked me to stay. No one tried to stop me. The VP did not look up. His assistant stared straight ahead, hands locked together. As I reached the door, someone behind me murmured, "We'll follow up. I'm sure you will," I replied, without turning. In the hallway, my phone buzzed once. Legal. "We'll send the documentation," I typed back. "Please do." That was it. No apology followed. None was owed. And none would have meant anything. Apologies fix moments. Structures fix outcomes. 3 days later, I sat across from my attorney in a quiet office. "You're certain?" she asked. "Yes." She slid the papers toward me. "This converts your holdings into a voting trust. You relinquish day-to-day discretion. I retain safeguards. You retain veto power under defined conditions." "Exactly." She nodded. "It will prevent unilateral decisions like the ones we reviewed. That's the point." She signed. I signed? The ink dried without ceremony. Later that week, a call came from the interim lead. "We've stabilized operations," he said. "Audit is ongoing. Good. We'd like your guidance moving forward." "You have it," I said. "Follow the rules you already agreed to." A pause. Respect settled into the line where fear had been earlier. When I returned to the building for the first time since the meeting, no one mistook me for staff. No one pointed. No one whispered. They opened doors instead. I nodded and kept walking. Power. I had learned, does not announce itself when it is secure. It does not linger to be admired. It sets its terms and steps away. I left early again that day. The work continued without me. And for the first time in a long while, that felt exactly right. What if the real lesson isn't about respect but about assumptions? The resignation came quietly, folded into a formal notice circulated by legal before noon. He's stepping down effective immediately, the interim lead said during the call. His voice was steady now, practiced. The investigation will continue. Good, I replied. And his assistant, he added, reassigned. Legal answered from another line. No supervisory authority. No one celebrated. No one needed to. The company moved the way it always should have, carefully, deliberately, with consequences attached to decisions instead of people scrambling to explain them away. A week later, I met with compliance to review the revised safeguards. We've stabilized operations, the director said. Vendor contracts restored. Terminations reversed where required. Keep the review active, I said. Stability isn't a finish line. It won't be treated as one. That was the last meeting I attended. In the days that followed, messages arrived asking for guidance, approval, reassurance. I answered only what mattered. Clarity did more than presence ever could. I was never invisible. That had been their mistake. They looked for authority where it announced itself and ignored the kind that waits, observes, and remembers. I did not win by revealing who I was. Titles fade too easily. I won by letting them reveal who they were when they believed no one withstanding was paying attention. The building did not change. The people did. Conversations slowed. Decisions traveled farther before landing. Assumptions learned to check themselves. Before I closed the file for the last time, I wrote one note for myself and left it where I would see it again. Power does not require recognition to exist. It requires discipline to use, patience to hold, and the courage to act when silence becomes permission for harm. That was the lesson, not for them, for me. The meeting lasted less than 10 minutes, but it cut my salary in half and changed how I understood power forever. Your compensation will be reduced by 50%, my boss said, sliding a single sheet of paper across the table, effective immediately. No preface, no apology, no build-up. I stayed seated, hands folded in my lap, and looked at him. On what basis he didn't hesitate. You're damaging the company's healthy culture. That phrase landed harder than the number. Healthy culture. As if it were something fragile I had cracked just by speaking. I'm Marin Whitaker, 46 years old. Operations compliance manager at a logistics firm headquartered in Minneapolis. I had been with the company long enough to know when a decision had already been made somewhere else. Sarah from Human Resources sat to his left. She didn't look at me. Her pen hovered over a blank notepad like she was waiting for something to write down, but not yet. This is disciplinary, I asked. It's corrective, my boss replied quickly. A necessary adjustment. Is there a written warning? A performance plan, I asked. No, Sarah said, finally lifting her eyes. Not at this time. I nodded once. I could feel my pulse in my throat, but my voice stayed even, understood. Both of them relaxed, just slightly. They thought that was it. I picked up the paper. It listed my name, my title, and a new salary number written in bold. No explanation, no reference to policy, no signatures beyond his. I set it back down. Can you show me which company policy allows you to reduce my salary like this? The silence was immediate and complete. My boss leaned back in his chair. Sarah's pen stopped moving altogether. It's about behavior, he said after a moment. About alignment. That's not what I asked. I asked which policy. No one answered. Sarah cleared her throat. We can follow up? I'd appreciate that, I said. The meeting ended without anyone officially ending it. Chairs scraped. Papers were gathered. My boss avoided my eyes as he stood. As I walked out, I already knew two things. My pay had been cut for defending someone who couldn't protect herself. And no one in that room could explain how they were allowed to do it. That mattered more than they realized. The story you're about to hear is a fictional work created by the writing team at Revenge AITA. While the characters and events are imagined, the situations are inspired by real workplace dynamics, faced by professionals who choose integrity over silence. This story explores how power is often misused behind closed doors, and what happens when someone refuses to look away. The first time I realized this was coming had nothing to do with my salary. It started 3 weeks earlier, in a smaller room. with a younger voice shaking across the table. Evelyn missed the verification step. Sarah from HR said, tapping a printed memo. That puts the delay on her. Evelyn Park sat beside me, shoulders tight, hands clenched together. Junior analyst, 18 months in, smart, careful. Still learning how to breathe in meetings like this. That's not accurate, I said. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't soften it either. My boss glanced at me. Marin, let HR finish. She did finish, I said, and she's wrong. Sarah frowned. The audit log shows the verification wasn't completed. It shows the verification tool failed to sync. I replied. I emailed IT about it 2 weeks before the incident. The ticket number is in my follow-up. I slid my laptop forward and turned the screen toward them. Timestamps, error reports, a process gap. Not a person, Evelyn whispered. I followed the checklist. I know, I said, without looking at her. Sarah exhaled. Even so, we need accountability. You're asking for a signature, I said, picking up the memo. This says Evelyn was negligent. She wasn't. My boss leaned back. Marin, we need to show we're addressing issues. We are, I said, by fixing the system that caused it. Silence stretched. Then Sarah said, it would help if you were more aligned. With what? I asked. The facts or the narrative? My boss's jaw tightened. You're making this harder than it needs to be. I slid the memo back across the table. Unsigned. I won't put my name on something that isn't true. Sarah's tone cooled. Noted. The meeting ended quickly after that. Evelyn followed me into the hallway, eyes glossy. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't mean to. This isn't on you, I said. Go back to your desk. She hesitated. Are you going to be okay? I watched Sarah disappear around the corner with the memo tucked under her arm. I did my job, I said. We'll see how they take that. By the end of the day, the disciplinary action was dropped. No apology, no correction. Just quiet compliance. And a shift I felt but couldn't yet name. The shift didn't come with an announcement. It came quietly, like a door closing somewhere behind me. 2 meetings disappeared from my calendar without explanation. When I asked my boss about it, he didn't look up from his screen. We're streamlining, he said. Too many voices slow things down. I was responsible for those reviews. I said, you'll get the notes afterward. I didn't. What I got instead was feedback. Delivered casually in the hallway. You're coming off rigid lately, he said, as if we were discussing weather. Not very aligned. Aligned with what? I asked. He smiled. Then. The direction leadership is taking. The word leadership had started to do a lot of work. A week later, I was called into his office. No HR this time. Just him. Arms folded. I need you to be more of a team player, he said. I am, I replied. I just don't confuse agreement with accuracy. His expression hardened. That right there, that tone. My tone, I said, evenly, or my position. You challenge decisions in front of people, he said. It undermines confidence. Which decisions? I asked. The ones that were wrong, he stood up, signaling the conversation was nearing its limit. This isn't about right or wrong. It's about culture. I let that sit. So performance no longer matters. He shook his head. Performance matters, but culture comes first. Then define it, I said. Because from where I'm standing, culture just replaced accountability. He didn't answer. He opened his door instead. After that, messages came through other people. Instructions filtered down without context. Decisions arrived finished, with my role reduced to execution. Ryan from planning caught up with me by the elevators. You okay? He asked quietly. I'm doing my job, I said. He hesitated. They're saying you push back too much. I push back when something's wrong. He nodded once. That's what I thought. By the end of the week, I understood the pattern. Facts were tolerated. Resistance was not. And the word culture had become the cleanest way to say comply. The first place I felt the cut wasn't in my pride. It was in my calendar. I sat at my kitchen table that night with my laptop open, recalculating everything I had already committed to. Mortgage, insurance, the automatic transfers I had set up years ago when stability felt permanent. I didn't curse or slam anything shut. I just adjusted numbers until they balanced again, even if the margins were suddenly thin. The next morning, I ran into my boss near the elevators. He nodded like nothing had changed. You doing okay? He asked. I'm working, I said. That's good, he replied. Let's keep things professional. They already were. That was the problem. By mid-morning, I drafted an email. No adjectives, no accusations, just facts. Per our meeting, I wrote, I am requesting the company policy that authorizes a reduction in base salary without prior documentation, progressive discipline, or notice. Please advise. I read it twice before sending. Then I added Sarah from HR and the internal compliance archive. Not to threaten, to record. Her response came 2 hours later. Thank you for reaching out, Marin, she wrote. We understand this situation may feel difficult. Leadership decisions are made in alignment with company values and culture. I stared at the screen. I replied immediately. I didn't ask about values. I asked for the policy. There was no answer that afternoon. Ryan stopped by my desk near the end of the day. You okay? He asked again. I will be, I said. He lowered his voice. They're saying you should have just let it go. I don't let false records exist, I said. Especially when they affect someone else. He nodded once, then left without another word. That evening, my phone buzzed. An email from Sarah. We are reviewing the relevant documentation and will follow up. No attachment, no reference, no policy, just time. I closed my laptop and sat still for a moment. They had taken half my pay, but they were still avoiding the one thing I had asked for. And the longer they delayed, the clearer it became that the answer wasn't complicated. It didn't exist. He called me into his office late that afternoon. Door already closed when I arrived. I just read your email, he said, holding his phone like it had personally offended him. You're making this adversarial. I'm documenting, I said, not attacking. He shook his head. You didn't need to involve compliance. I asked for a policy, I replied. That's where policies live. This could have been a conversation, he said. It was, I said. You ended it. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. You're turning a corrective step into a legal issue. You already did, I said. When you changed my pay, his jaw tightened. You're not listening, I said. You're saying this is about culture. I'm asking how culture authorizes a salary reduction without documentation. He stood, signaling the meeting was nearing its limit. This is exactly the behavior I'm talking about. Clarity? I asked. Resistance, he said. I opened my laptop. Then help me understand. I drafted a second email while he watched, my fingers steady on the keys. Please provide the official company policies governing salary adjustment, disciplinary action, and corrective measures. I read aloud as I typed, including any approvals required and effective dates. He exhaled sharply. This isn't necessary. Then it will be easy to answer, I said. I added Sarah from HR again, then the compliance archive. Then I hit send. The room went quiet. You know this puts people on edge, he said. Accuracy does that sometimes, I replied. He didn't respond. He opened the door instead. By the time I got back to my desk, my inbox was already buzzing. A short message from Sarah. We've received your request and will review the relevant materials. No timeline, no attachments. Ryan walked past and paused. Everything okay? I asked for a policy. I said. He nodded slowly. That explains the mood upstairs. An hour later, my boss sent one last message. Let's keep things collaborative. I didn't reply. The record already was. Once a system is asked to explain itself in writing, it can no longer hide behind tone. The delay was the answer before anyone admitted it. 2 days passed, then 3. HR stopped responding altogether. When Sarah finally asked to meet, her email was careful, almost polite in a way it hadn't been before. Just a quick check-in, she wrote, to clarify a few things. The room was smaller this time, no boss. Just Sarah and a man I hadn't met before, introduced as Mark from internal compliance. He didn't shake my hand. He opened a folder. We're reviewing the documentation related to your compensation adjustment, Sarah said. I know, I replied. That's what I asked for. Mark cleared his throat. We've been unable to locate a standard policy that authorizes an immediate salary reduction without prior disciplinary steps. Sarah didn't look at him. It may have been applied as a discretionary measure. By whom? I asked. She hesitated. By leadership, so not by policy. I said. Mark glanced up. That's correct. The room shifted. It was subtle, but I felt it. Authority wasn't sitting where it used to. Sarah folded her hands. We're still gathering context. I've provided all of mine. I said emails, performance records. My refusal to sign a disciplinary memo that misrepresented the facts. Mark nodded once. We've reviewed those. And, I added, there was no approval chain for the pay change. He didn't contradict me. Sarah finally met my eyes. This review will take some time. That's fine, I said. My pay was cut in minutes. Silence settled again. Heavier now, not defensive, cautious. As I stood to leave, Sarah spoke quickly. We ask that you remain professional during this process. I have, I said, consistently. Outside the room, I saw my boss watching from the end of the hall. He didn't approach. He didn't wave. He turned away. By the end of the day, meetings were quietly rescheduled. Decisions slowed. Emails started including extra names. Nothing had been fixed yet, but something had cracked. They hadn't found a policy because there wasn't one. And once that became part of the record, everything else had to be reconsidered. He caught me just before lunch, standing a little too close, voice lowered like we were sharing a secret. Can we talk? He said. Not a question. A request that expected compliance. We went into a small room near the break area. No calendar invite. No HR. I think this has gone further than it needed to, he said. We can fix it. How? I asked. He rubbed his hands together. I can reverse the pay change. Effective next cycle. We'll call it a misunderstanding. In writing, I said. He paused. There's no need to formalize it. There is, I said. The decision was formal. The correction should be too. His tone sharpened. You're making this harder. I didn't make it, I replied. I asked how it was allowed. He leaned back. Do you really want this on record? It could affect relationships? Mine already has, I said. He tried again. Softer this time. We'll restore your pay. No one needs to know the details. HR needs to know. I said, compliance needs to know. He shook his head. That invites scrutiny. It already exists, I said. You invited it when you cut my salary without policy. Silence stretched between us. He looked past me, calculating. Think about it, he said. We can keep this clean. Clean isn't quiet, I said. Clean is correct. He stood abruptly. I'm trying to help you. You're trying to help yourself, I said, and kept my voice steady. Those are different things. When I left the room, my inbox chimed. An email from Sarah, brief and careful. HR will be expanding the scope of the review. It read, additional documentation may be requested. I forwarded it to compliance without comment. An hour later, my boss sent one last message. Let's keep this constructive. I didn't reply. The record was already speaking, and it didn't need my permission to keep going. The review stopped being theoretical the moment people from outside our building joined the call. This is Patricia Haynes from Regional Operations, the woman said, voice steady. We'll be walking through the decision timeline. Sarah from HR was already there, so was Mark from Compliance. My boss joined last, camera on, expression carefully neutral. Patricia didn't waste time. We're looking at a compensation reduction executed without documented discipline. Who authorized it? My boss spoke first. I did. Under which policy? Patricia asked. He hesitated. It was a corrective measure aligned with culture. That's not a policy, Mark said quietly. Patricia nodded. We've audited the documentation chain. There's no prior warning, no performance plan, no approval record. Sarah shifted in her chair. We're acknowledging a procedural gap. It's not a gap, Patricia said. It's a violation. No one interrupted her, she continued. The company was exposed to unnecessary risk. Wage adjustment without process creates liability. Retaliation concerns were also flagged. My boss leaned forward. That was never the intent. Intent doesn't override procedure, Patricia said. Outcome matters. She turned to me. Marin, your performance reviews show consistent compliance leadership. There's no record supporting corrective action. I asked for policy. I said, that's all. Patricia nodded once. And that's why we're here. The call ended abruptly after that. No small talk. No reassurance. Within hours, meetings were paused across the department. Approval requests stalled. Emails started copying people I had never seen included before. Later that afternoon, Sarah stopped by my desk. Her voice was lower than usual. The review confirmed the compensation change was not authorized, she said. We're preparing formal remediation. And accountability, I said. She didn't argue. When I looked up, my boss was standing across the floor, watching as Patricia spoke with Mark near the elevators. He didn't approach me. He didn't need to. The system was finally doing what it was designed to do, and it was no longer listening to him. The email arrived at 9:12 in the morning. No subject line drama, just a calendar invite titled Compensation Review Outcome. Patricia Haynes from Regional Operations was already on the call when I joined. Sarah sat beside her, posture formal. Mark from Compliance nodded once in greeting. My boss joined last, face tight, eyes fixed somewhere off-screen. Patricia spoke first. We've concluded the review. She paused, letting the words settle. The salary reduction implemented against Marin Whitaker did not follow company procedure. There was no documented discipline, no approval chain, and no policy basis. Sarah took over. Effective immediately. Marin's compensation will be restored in full, retroactive to the date of reduction. I exhaled slowly, not relief. Release. Additionally, Patricia said, all related notations in Marin's personnel record will be removed. There will be no disciplinary reference associated with this action. I nodded once. Thank you. Patricia turned to my boss. Your authority to make compensation and disciplinary decisions is suspended pending further training and oversight. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Understood, he said finally. Sarah added, a formal notice will be issued documenting the procedural violation and corrective steps. Silence followed, not awkward, final. After the call ended, Sarah stopped by my desk with a printed letter. This confirms the restoration and record correction, she said. Her voice was professional again, careful in a different way. Thank you, I said. Ryan appeared a few minutes later, eyes wide. It's official, he said quietly. Yes, I replied. Across the floor. My boss packed a folder into his bag. He didn't look up when he passed. No apology, no explanation, just distance. Later that afternoon, an internal memo went out announcing interim changes to approval processes, new controls, additional oversight, language about accountability and risk mitigation. Nothing in it mentioned my name. That was fine. The correction had been made, the record was clean, and the authority that had been used against me had been reduced to what it should have been all along, not personal, procedural. The final meeting was shorter than the first one that had started all of this. Patricia sat across from me. Folder closed this time. Sarah was there too, quiet but attentive. No one spoke until Patricia did. We need to be clear, she said. What happened to you was retaliation disguised as culture. That's not acceptable here, I nodded. I didn't feel the need to add anything. Patricia continued, her tone firm but measured. Policies exist to prevent exactly this kind of misuse of authority. When someone bypasses them, it doesn't just harm an employee, it weakens the entire structure. Sarah glanced at me. We're updating internal training to reflect that. Good, I said. Because silence was treated like cooperation. Patricia closed the folder. Your role and standing are secure. If there are any further concerns, you come directly to us. I will, I said. As we stood to leave, Sarah hesitated. For what it's worth, you handled this professionally. I followed the rules, I replied. That's all. Back at my desk. My inbox was quieter than it had been in weeks. No side comments, no carefully worded warnings. Just work. Returned to its proper shape. Ryan stopped by once more. Guess asking the question worked. He said, it always does, I said. Eventually. That afternoon, I passed my former boss in the hallway. He stepped aside to let me through. No words were exchanged. None were needed. The power dynamic had already shifted, not through confrontation, but through record and process. I shut down my computer at the end of the day and stood for a moment before leaving, not to celebrate, to mark the boundary I had held. Rules are not weapons for those in power. They are safeguards for those willing to stand still long enough to use them. When someone punishes you for asking how the system works, it is not because you're wrong. It is because clarity threatens control. And patience, backed by truth, will always outlast fear. My boss took everything when he fired me, and he did it in front of the people who had been waiting for it. What would you do if your career ended with one sentence spoken where no one could pretend they didn't hear it? I was still explaining the last compliance checkpoint when Daniel Cross lifted a finger. Not a hand, just one finger. That's enough. The room went still. Human resources, he added, already leaning back. The woman beside him opened a folder. Meredith Hale. Effective immediately. Your employment is terminated due to procedural failures and misrepresentation of compliance status. That is inaccurate. The words came out before I could stop them. Every milestone was approved. Daniel's mouth curved slightly. Not a smile. Something rehearsed. We're not revisiting decisions, he said. We're moving forward, around the table. Eyes dropped. Someone shifted in their chair. No one spoke. The word landed like a switch being flipped. My screen went black. That access has been revoked. HR continued, reading now. Voice smoother. You'll be required to return all company property. Daniel stood and reached for my badge. He didn't wait for me to unclip it. The plastic snapped softly as he pulled it free. Everything you have here is mine, he said, holding it up for a moment, except that laptop. He nodded toward my computer as if it were a forgotten coat. I don't need it, he added. Security will walk you out. I closed the laptop slowly. No one stopped me. No one asked a question. As I stood, Daniel was already turning back to the table. Let's continue. I took 2 steps toward the door when the screen flickered once. One email, no greeting, no signature. Per contract, who is the authorized party now? I kept walking. The story you are about to hear is a fictional work created by the writing team at Revenge ATA. The characters and events are imagined, but the power dynamics, the silence, and the consequences are painfully real. Each story we tell carries a different truth. This one begins with a dismissal and a mistake that no one in that room realized had just been made. The door closed behind me. My badge was gone. My name was already being rewritten. All I had left was the laptop Daniel Cross did not want and whatever it was about to reveal. What do you notice when the noise finally stops and you're left alone with the truth? The apartment was quiet enough that my phone buzzing sounded intrusive. I set the laptop on the table and opened it without ceremony. No passwords broken, no systems touched, just my own files, saved emails, calendar invites, meeting recaps I'd forwarded to myself for years because Daniel liked to clean up records after the fact. I opened the contract folder first. The license agreement sat exactly where I remembered it. Third-party compliance. My name appeared once, then again, then in bold on the final page. Authorized signatory Meredith Hale. I stared at it longer than I meant to. Termination date meant nothing here. There was a clause beneath it, short, precise. Transfer of authority required written reassignment, countersigned by both parties, no reassignment, no counter-signature. A knock of panic moved through my chest. My phone buzzed again. Lena. They're asking me to get your approval. I don't know what to do. Lena was 26. Brilliant, terrified of making the wrong move. I typed, deleted, then typed again. Me. Who's asking? The reply came fast. Lena. The vendor. They won't release the update without the signatory confirmation. Daniel told me to handle it. I closed my eyes. Daniel always told someone else to handle it. I called her. I didn't know they'd still use your name, she said, breathless. I swear. HR said you were. Stop. I said, listen carefully. Silence on the line. She was listening now. You're not to send anything, I went on. No approvals, no signatures, not even a draft. But he'll ask me why. Then you tell him the truth. Another pause. Which is? That authority didn't move with the badge, she swallowed. I heard it. Meredith, she said quietly. What happens now? I looked back at the screen, at my name, still where it had always been. Nothing, I said, unless someone tries to pretend it already did. When the call ended, the room felt smaller, not safer, clearer. Daniel Cross had pushed me out fast, too fast, as if time itself were a liability. I closed the laptop and left it on the table, exactly where it belonged. When everyone tells you to fight, how do you know when not to? The lawyer read the termination notice twice, then set it down with a sound that meant she'd already decided. This is a clean case, she said. Wrongful termination, defamation implied. We file immediately. Her name was Rachel Moreno. Downtown office, calm voice, sharp eyes. She spoke the way people do when they believe momentum is on their side. I don't want to file. I said. She looked up. Not surprised, curious. You've been publicly accused of misconduct. I know. They locked you out mid-meeting. I was there. Rachel leaned back. Then help me understand why you're hesitating. I slid my phone across the table and turned the screen toward her. The message from Lena was still there. The subject line from the vendor sat beneath it. Rachel read, then frowned. Authorized signatory. My name, I said, still my name. That doesn't stop a lawsuit. It does if the story changes before the paperwork lands. She waited. There's a non-disclosure clause, I continued. Broad enough to choke a career. If I sue now, he controls the narrative. I become the employee who couldn't follow process, the one who had to be escorted out. Rachel's fingers tapped once on the table. And if you don't, he rushes, I said. He signs. Signs? What responsibility? She studied me for a long moment. You're asking me to do nothing. I'm asking you to let him think I've folded. That's risky. So is a public fight I can't afford to lose. Rachel exhaled slowly. Blacklisting quietly. I said, no calls returned, no contracts, no reasons given. She nodded. She'd seen it before. If I sue now, I lose. I said. I need him to sign first. Rachel closed the folder, then we wait. For how long? Until he makes a move he can't take back. I stood, shouldering my bag. At the door, she added. When that happens, call me, don't email. I stepped outside with my phone already buzzing. A new message from Daniel. Sign the handover. Let's end this cleanly. I put the phone away and kept walking. What hurts more, being fired or being rewritten? The email reached me before Lena did. Company-wide, Daniel's name at the top. Polite subject line, neutral tone. Recent project delays stemmed from internal process failures that leadership has now addressed. Addressed, past tense, clean. My phone rang a minute later. They sent it to everyone, Lena said. She didn't bother pretending she was calm. They're saying you missed approvals. That you, I know. I said, I've read it. They're asking me questions, not directly, just comments. Like they already decided who's asking Daniel. And Mark from operations. A pause. They want me to confirm the timeline. They want me to say you were behind. And what did you say that I needed to check my notes? That was the right answer. Her voice dropped. He told me this was my chance to step up. There it was. The offer wrapped in pressure. They're not asking you to tell the truth, I said. They're asking you to repeat what they already wrote. Silence. Then, if I don't, then they'll say, you're not ready. She let out a short breath. I didn't think it would be like this. Neither did I. After we hung up, more messages came through, not questions, absences, conversations that stopped mid-thread. A calendar invite I had always been on removed without comment. By evening, Daniel messaged me directly, sign the handover, then we can all move on. I stared at the words longer than I should have. There was no apology, no acknowledgement, just an instruction, phrased like a favor. I typed once, deleted it, typed again, send the document. The reply came almost immediately. Attached, please confirm by end of day. The file name was precise, neutral, final. I opened it and read every line, twice. My name appeared only once now. Not as owner, not as lead, as the last obstacle. I closed the document without signing and set the phone face down. By the time the city went quiet, the story without me was already circulating. And tomorrow, Daniel expected my signature to make it official. What kind of surrender scares the other side the most? Daniel didn't invite me to sit. The conference room camera light was already on when I joined the call. His face filled the screen, composed, pleased with itself. Legal sat off to the side, muted. Human resources watched without blinking. The document is standard, Daniel began. Control transfers immediately. We close this today. I read it, I said. He nodded, like a man humoring a delay. Good. Then we're aligned. I scrolled to the middle. Read this section out loud. A pause? Which section? The one that starts with assumption of responsibility. Daniel waved it off. That's boilerplate. It isn't, I said. Please read it. He smiled again. Smaller this time. We don't need to perform. Legal shifted in their chair, still muted. I continued. Transfer of control. Transfer of delivery obligations. Transfer of compliance liability. End to end. Daniel leaned closer to the camera. You're done here, Meredith. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I'm not, I said. I'm making it accurate. He exhaled, impatient. Sign it. I signed. My name appeared once, clean and final. Daniel didn't hesitate. His signature landed seconds later. He didn't scroll, didn't ask legal to confirm. He glanced up with a look I recognized the relief of someone who believed the risk had passed. There, he said. You just signed away your career. No one corrected him. The call ended without ceremony. No goodbye, no follow-up. My phone buzzed almost immediately. Daniel. We're done. Don't contact the team again. I didn't reply. A minute later, another message arrived, not from him. Lena. He's asking for the release approval, right now. I set the phone down and opened the signed document once more. The language hadn't changed, control transferred, responsibility transferred. Every deliverable, every obligation, every consequence now had a single owner, not me. I closed the file and shut the laptop. The silence felt different this time, not empty. Counted. What happens when a project keeps moving, but the approval doesn't? The first message came from someone I didn't recognize. Vendor compliance. We are pausing release pending authorized confirmation. I read it twice, then set the phone down. 5 minutes later, Lena called. They froze the deliverables, she said. Everything. The update, the handoff, all of it. Did they say why? They said the authorization didn't clear. I heard voices behind her. Tight, urgent. Daniel told them to proceed anyway, she added. They said they can't. That's accurate, I said. They're not allowed to. A beat. He's furious. I know. Another call cut in before she could say more. This one from Evan Price, the account manager at the partner firm. We had worked together for 2 years. He didn't waste words. We're holding payment, he said. No approval, no release. Understood. Your name is still listed, he went on. We flagged it last night. I'm aware. Silence. He was weighing something. Has the authority changed? No, I said. Not formally. Then we wait. When the call ended, my inbox filled with alerts. Status changed. Timeline shifted. Red where there had been green. Lena texted again. Lena. They're asking why you haven't signed off, I typed slowly. Me, because I'm no longer responsible. She didn't respond right away. When she did, it was only one line. Lena. He's telling legal, this is your fault. I closed my eyes. A few minutes later, my phone rang again. Daniel's number, I let it ring. A voicemail followed. Meredith, his voice snapped. This is getting out of hand. Sign the release and stop playing games. I didn't call back. Another message arrived, this time from legal. Legal. We are reviewing the authorization gap. Please stand by. Stand by. The system hadn't stopped. It had slowed, tightened, and begun asking for names. I set the phone face down and waited. How many warnings does it take before pride becomes evidence? Legal reached out before Daniel did. We need to talk. The message read, no greeting, no signature. The call connected with 3 faces on the screen. 2 attorneys, 1 compliance officer I recognized but had never spoken to directly. The partner has requested an external audit, one of them began. Standard procedure when authorization gaps appear. Daniel cut in immediately. We don't have time for that. Silence followed, not agreement, measurement. The deadline is fixed, he continued. The board is already asking questions. An audit delays everything. The compliance officer leaned forward. An audit protects the company. Daniel smiled tightly. I built this project. I know what's in it. One of the attorneys tried again. Daniel, this is a recommendation. Declining it increases risk, then we accept the risk. He said, send me whatever I need to sign. No one spoke for a moment. We need that in writing, the attorney said at last. Fine. A document appeared in the chat. Short, direct, the kind designed to be ignored. Daniel didn't read it. He never did when he thought speed was strength. He signed. The compliance officer cleared her throat. For the record, this confirms you are declining independent review against counsel's advice. Noted, Daniel replied. Now let's move forward. The attorney nodded once. We'll document that. The call ended. My phone buzzed seconds later. A message from legal. Legal. The waiver is executed. I didn't reply. Another message followed, this one from Lena. Lena. He told everyone this is almost resolved. I looked at the screen and imagined Daniel's confidence, the way he liked to close doors with his back straight and his voice steady. He thought the delay was a nuisance, a technicality, something to muscle through. He didn't realize the door had already closed, and this time, it had locked from the inside. Have you ever watched someone realize too late that the rules still apply to them? The meeting invite landed without explanation. Mandatory, immediate. When the call opened, the screen filled fast. Daniel. 2 members of leadership, legal, and a new square I didn't recognize. Thomas Reed, outside counsel for the partner firm. He didn't smile. We'll begin. Thomas said, no preamble. This is a notice of material breach. Legal stiffened. Daniel leaned back, arms crossed. Thomas continued. Unauthorized release attempts. Failure to provide valid signatory approval. Non-compliance with contractual safeguards. Daniel cut in. We've already addressed the authorization. You addressed control. Thomas replied, not authority. He shared his screen. A document appeared, dates, clauses, a highlighted line, per agreement. Thomas went on. Any release without authorized confirmation constitutes breach. Penalties accrue daily until remediation. One of the executives cleared his throat. What penalties? Thomas didn't hesitate. Suspension of payment, recovery of advance funds, liquidated damages in the amount of $250,000. Potential termination for cause. The room went quiet. Legal spoke carefully. We declined an audit. Thomas nodded. We saw the waiver. Daniel leaned forward now. This is exaggerated. We can resolve it. Legal turned toward him, voice lowered. Daniel. He looked at them, annoyed. You personally assumed this liability. The words landed differently than everything before them. Daniel blinked. What? Legal didn't repeat it. They didn't need to. They pulled up the handover document, his signature, the clause beneath it. Assumption of responsibility. End to end. Thomas closed the file. Our position is clear. Leadership exchanged looks. No one defended Daniel. He opened his mouth, then closed it. The confidence drained in stages. First the smile, then the posture. Finally, the certainty. For the first time since this began, Daniel looked at me. Not angry, not dismissive, measured. The call ended without ceremony. No shouting, no accusations, just outcomes. When the screen went dark, my phone buzzed once. Legal. We'll take it from here. I set the phone down and let the silence do its work. What does winning look like when no one is clapping? The first confirmation came from legal. Daniel Cross has been removed from the project. The message read, no explanation, no apology, just a fact. An hour later. Lena called. They pulled his access, she said. Her voice carried something new. Relief edged with disbelief. He didn't even say goodbye. Who's leading now? Interim committee. They told us not to discuss it. That means they're discussing it, I said. She let out a small laugh, then stopped herself. I didn't think this would actually happen. Neither did he. The next call came from a number I recognized. Meredith, Evan said. I'll keep this short. I appreciate that. Our position hasn't changed, he continued. We need someone who understands the compliance structure and can sign without delays. And the board asked me to reach out directly. Are you available to consult independently? I didn't answer right away. I'm not asking for an answer today, Evan added. But we're moving forward, with or without your former company. When the call ended, I sat with the phone in my hand longer than necessary. Another message came in, this time from legal. Legal. The internal review is ongoing. You're not implicated, as if that had ever been in doubt. By evening, the noise I had lived inside for months finally receded. No urgent messages, No warnings, no instructions disguised as favors. I opened the laptop and reviewed the consulting agreement Evan had sent. My name appeared where it should. Authority defined, scope clear, no rush, no pressure. Lena texted one last time before midnight. Lena, I told them you taught me everything that matters. I typed back a single line, me. Then remember it. I closed the laptop without signing. Tomorrow would be soon enough. What if the real victory isn't revenge, but walking away clean? The contract arrived just after 9 in the morning. No cover letter, no pressure, just a clean document and a single line from Evan. Take your time. This is written the way it should have been the first time. I opened it slowly. My name sat at the top. Unambiguous. Not buried, not conditional. Authorized party Meredith Hale. Scope defined. Liability assigned clearly. Exit terms written in plain language, not traps. I read every line, then read it again. My phone buzzed once. Everything looks good on our end. Evan said when I answered. If you're ready, I am. I said. There was a pause. Then a quiet acknowledgement. Welcome aboard. I signed. The confirmation email followed within minutes. Authorization confirmed. That was it. No applause, no announcement, no final meeting where someone pretended this had all been handled gracefully. Later that afternoon, Lena texted. They told us not to contact you anymore, she wrote. So I guess this is me not contacting you. I smiled. You'll do fine. What about him, she asked. I don't manage that anymore. Daniel Cross took everything he asked for. The project, the authority, the responsibility that came with both. The investigation would finish without my input. The outcome would land where it belonged. I closed the laptop and left it on the table. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the urge to check one more message or anticipate the next demand. I walked out into a future that did not require my silence or my erasure. Power doesn't belong to the loudest voice in the room. It belongs to the person who understands the rules, protects their name, and knows when to let others carry the weight of what they insisted on taking.